Let's talk about this with Nomiki Konst, Executive Director of the Accountability Project and a former Democratic candidate for Congress, and Kristin Tate, conservative columnist and the author of Government Gone Wild. So this is an interesting piece, Nomiki, in the Washington Post, talking about the questions that the Hillary Clinton campaign are struggling with to figure out what's going to be on the top of her agenda when she is president. Of course, we had this story from Catherine Harris that started our hour, again, about more questions about her emails and what's exactly in them. Do you think it's too early for Hillary Clinton's team to be worried about their agenda?
I think that any responsible candidate, especially at this point with the polls suggesting such a large lead, would be preparing for what would happen post January 20th.
Are you surprised there's not a clear answer for what's at the top of the agenda?
I think that she's laid out quite a few things. She said that she wants to have parity in the cabinet, gender parity in the cabinet. She wants to eliminate gun manufacturer immunity, which is a major issue right now, that victims of gun violence aren't able to sue gun manufacturers who are, quite frankly, to blame for a lot of the deaths out there due to gun violence. You know, she's talked about campaign finance reform. I mean, this is what a presidential candidate, responsible presidential candidate does. Now, to be fair, Donald Trump does also have a transition team. He just does not have specifics on what he would want to get passed.
And Kristin, let's talk a little bit about that. One of the reasons why the Clinton team is feeling more confident is when they look at their base and they look at Democrats, they have overwhelming support from Democrats. For Donald Trump hasn't been able to say the same thing when he looks amongst Republicans. What do you think of that disparity?
Well, look, Hillary Clinton is taking it for granted that she's going to win way too early. By assuming she's going to win, she's assuming Trump is going to continue to run a weak campaign. To be fair, Trump has been doing a really horrible job these past couple of months until last week. Last week on Thursday and Friday, we saw a much different Donald Trump. We saw a Trump that was still strong and maintained that populist spirit that everyone loves, but he was also humble and he was willing to admit his mistakes. So going forward, if he can a message like that, and if he can focus on the people and not on himself and taking down his critics with personal attacks, Hillary Clinton should not get too comfortable.
Critics are, though, pointing to his infrastructure and saying, listen, Donald Trump doesn't have the infrastructure that Hillary Clinton has set up. He's relying too much on the Republican National Committee to do his work in those swing states. How does that impact what you think about the campaign? Does it concern you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, he needs to do a better job with infrastructure. He needs to do a better job with raising money. However, he's a very unconventional candidate, and he's shown us in the past that he can do a very good job with limited resources. While Hillary is spending millions on TV ads, he's doing a great job utilizing new media like Twitter. And I mean, look at what Jeb Bush did. He raised $100 million in the primary. I'm from New Hampshire. Nearly every billboard in that state had a message from Jeb on it last fall. He lost to
Interesting
Trump
point.
because, you know, Trump wowed during the debates and spent very little.
The email issue so far, Nomiki, hasn't necessarily, it doesn't seem like it has impacted Hillary Clinton supporters, and when you look at the polls. But now we have yet another story, another week, another almost 15,000 emails that people are raising questions about. Does that concern you in any way? What do you think is the impact on her campaign?
I don't think it's going to have an impact on, I mean, listen, when you poll independents and Democrats, they are unfazed. The drip, drip, drip is not hitting the polls. It's hitting maybe the legal argument. There's absolutely a legal argument to be made, and I think that's the campaign's concern. I think that's Hillary Clinton's concern. But it's not the concern of the American people, because they've been overwhelmed by this. I mean, the Republican Party has taken it to a whole other level. They've taken an actual legal issue and they've made it a political game.
When you say she's worried about a legal issue, legal action against, are you still concerned as a Democrat that could be an issue for her?
I'm not going to be irresponsible, of course, and I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, so I'm fully transparent about this. But, you know, U.S. Attorney General, U.S. Attorney Preet from New York State is investigating the Clinton Foundation and its relationship with the State Department. So that is a concern. But just to go back to an earlier point about Donald Trump, with the polls this wide right now in the difference, it has been over 60 years since a presidential candidate who's been leading by that much has lost.
And of course, his supporters will say, well, this is not a traditional candidate, it's not a traditional year. So we'll see what comes from it. Thank you both for being here. We appreciate it.